Near mint condition, the home of collected editions.
That cover's so awesome.
Absolute format is the best way to own this store. Time to empty those wallets and fill those shelves. How's it going, all you minties? Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, the home of collected editions. And join me today for your advanced look at all of these collected editions coming out this week from Marvel Comics. So let's go ahead and get started. And welcome back, everybody. Now, before getting started, a big thank you to David Gabriel and the fine folks at Marvel for sending us advanced copies of these collected editions. All of these coming out the week of March 19th or 20th, depending on where you get your books. So, we've got 8 books, and 5 of them are big. So, let's not waste any time. In the description of the video is where I'm going to have the timestamps to let you know when I'm talking about a particular book, in case you don't want any kind of spoilers, or in case you're just interested in a few of them. But before you go down there, smash that like button. Please, that goes a long way for us here on the channel. Check out our Patreon and Spreadshop, amazing ways to support the channel if you can do so. And a big thank you to our patrons for helping to make videos like this. Alright, let's go ahead and start this week with Wolverine, Volume 7. Wolverine by Benjamin Percy, Volume 7, but otherwise just Wolverine, Volume 7. This is the latest book that spins out of the Hellfire Gala. And again, I'd like to note that if you haven't read the Hellfire Gala, the 2023 one, there might be some spoilers here for what happened there, just in case you haven't read it. Okay, anybody else doesn't care or just has read it already? Love this 4 Wolverine, 1 Hulk cover. Why are there 4 Wolverines? Well, that actually is part of the story. I thought it was just his different poses at first, but I had forgotten what happened in Volume 6. So written by Benjamin Percy, Juan Jose Rip, and Abraham Mustafa are the main artists. And then the color artist is Frank DeMarta, and the letter is Corey Petit. Leno Francis Yu supplying the covers. So in the aftermath of Hellfire Gala, we have Orchis going after all of the mutants, including Wolverine. And while he's not really focused on getting revenge yet, he's more focused on destroying these 3 clones that were part of the whole Weapons of X storyline that happened in the previous story arc. So that's what this is. This collects issues 37 through 40, sorry, not 50. 37 through 40 of Wolverine, 120 pages, $17.99. And it is a journey of trying to find these 3 clones, and some of them have interesting appearances here. And he is teaming up with different characters from the Marvel Universe, and each one of them reminding Wolverine what their status quo is, which is really interesting. Because, as you probably know, the Hulk has a different status quo now after the whole Immortal Hulk. This is during Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, and then we also have him teaming up with Captain America through here to take down one branch of Orchis out to sea, but also having a flashback. I was just talking to my buddy Peter M about this run. This is the team up with T'Challa, and how it has its ups and downs. But when it has its ups, it really reminds me of the era of that Mary Jo Duffy and Archie Goodwin, and I guess a little bit of John Byrne during the Acts of Vengeance era of Wolverine. Like, introducing new elements, but also going back to the classic things that make Wolverine great. And a lot of that is done through a series of flashbacks. So this is a team up with T'Challa. What is he doing in Wakanda? Well, like I said, he is hunting down these clones of Wolverine. And you can find out who else he teams up with and how it all ends. Let's look at the back here for some covers. So the chapter breaks will have the cover, but they have that red tint to them. These actually have the textless covers in whole in the back, and then the thumbnail size covers as well. And that is Wolverine by Benjamin Percy, Volume 7. Doctor Strange by Jed MacKay, Volume 2, The War-Hound of Vishanti. This week had some really good books. Some stuff I've read in the past, some that I haven't read, and it's going to be hard to pick my pick of the week. But This definitely was a contender because this was so good. If you haven't read Jed MacKay's Doctor Strange run, it is phenomenal. And I will say I'll talk a little bit about spoilers for what happened previously. And there's nothing I can do about one title. So just in case you haven't read any of Jed MacKay's, that started with an event that went to Strange and now Doctor Strange, minor spoilers for what happened previously. Okay, opening the book up. Volume 2. And it is still kicking butt. Oh my gosh, this book is so good. Alex, how in the world does Alex Ross have this much time to do painted covers for this and all the other comics that he's putting at Marvel? So, written all by Jed MacKay. There is one little part that is written by Jonathan Hickman, and that is from the Gods page that happens in the first issue here. Juan Gedeon doing issue number 6, Pasquale Ferry doing crazy, amazing artwork for issue 7 through 10. So this does contain Doctor Strange 6 through 10, and then parts of just one page of Gods, which isn't even mentioned in the contents of the book. You have K.J. Diaz and Heather Moore doing the colors. And then you have Corey Petit doing the lettering. So previously, we know that there was an event called The Death of Doctor Strange. And you don't have to be a genius to figure out what happened there. And you also don't have to be a genius to realize that Stephen Strange is back being Doctor Strange. Okay, now that you know that, we can talk about this book. This takes place immediately after issue number 5. So this is 6 through 10. Where the Vishanti is visiting Doctor Strange at an unknown time, just many years ago, playing it safe, and they're drafting him. They're going to draft him for a war that is to come. And this is where it gets really interesting, because the war doesn't last just 1 year. The war doesn't last 4 or 5 years. The war lasts 5,000 years. And it's the name. Well, no, actually, the War-HOUND of the Vishanti is not the name of the war. The war is known as the War of the Seven Spheres. And this is really interesting because it kind of reminds me of the JLA. Joe Kelly did a story about Superman and Wonder Woman living in his alternate dimension for about, I think it wasn't 5,000 years. It was thousands of years. Very similar to that, where he's not aging, not in real time. He's aging a little bit different. This is right here, the Gods part, where we see Wynn show up. What makes this story interesting is that as soon as the war starts, he's given a couple of captains that are leading his army, and they keep referring to him as general, and he keeps correcting them. I'm not a general, I'm a freaking doctor. You call me Doctor Strange. And it happens up until you get to a certain year where he's just lost it. He's lost his right eye, or left eye, sorry. He's been betrayed. And now he just wants to be called General. So this is the beginning of General Strange. So the Vishanti take him out of the war. And what they do, this is really interesting. To end the war, they need one life. This is the war against the Trinity. And they want one life. And whose life is it? It's General Strange. So he's like, how can you do this to me? You said you would put me back when I was done fighting your war. I am General Strange. So what they do is they split him in two, which we've seen in a way before with the character of Doctor Strange. And they wipe away his memories, one of them, of course, of Doctor Strange when they return him to Earth. And they put General Strange inside of this crystal where he's supposed to be kept until the end of time. Unless things happen. Like the death of Doctor Strange. So he even makes this little comical comment here where he's like, well, in that case, I suppose I had better try very hard not to die, because I don't want that guy getting out. And then we flash forward to the present day, where we do see General Strange that has gotten out of captivity, and he's fighting Doctor Strange. And that's what this is. So it's not about the 5,000-year war, even though I would have loved to have read more about that. It's just crazy that it's just one issue. I love it. Well, one issue and one little page from Gods. But it is about the fight between Doctor Strange and General Strange. Same person, but just 5,000 years apart. And it gets crazy, especially when characters like Clea get involved. And of course, Umar and all the characters that come into play now have to fight General Strange. And there might be characters that side with General Strange, that don't side with Doctor Strange, and that's when things get interesting. I I am enjoying the hell out of this book. If you have not been reading Doctor Strange for a while, this is some of the best Doctor Strange it's been in a long time. I'm loving it. I love the art here by Pasquale Ferry, who in the past has been very hit and miss with me. But I really fit his, I don't want to show you what happens later on because there's some spoilers there. But it really fits the tone of this story. So I'm loving it here. In the back, we do have some thumbnail size covers and then a splash cover here by Peach Momoko. Issue 6 through 10, 112 pages, retails for $15.99. Miss Marvel, The New Mutant Volume 1. I don't know why I held up two fingers. Just one. Volume 1. So I believe there's going to be more. Because this one definitely leaves it open for more stories to tell. This right here is another one that spins out of the Hellfire Gala. So just in case, you know the drill. There's the spoilers thing. Just in case. Alright. So I find this to be a really interesting book. I've always liked the character of Miss Marvel since her first appearance here by G. Willow Wilson. But what I find interesting about this is that Iman Vellani is co-writing this with Xavier Persada. And you have Carlos Gomez on art with Adam Gorman. And your color artist is Eric Arciniega. And Joe Caramagna is the letterer. Iman Vellani is the actress that plays Miss Marvel in the MCU. And Xavier Persada is the scriptwriter for the Miss Marvel show, I believe. So both of them are familiar with the character in beginning. So this is the forward here by Iman Vellani. So I don't know if you all know this or not, but just in case you didn't, she is a fan first. Like, there was no Miss Marvel in the MCU. She was a fan of the comic, grew up with the comic, cosplayed as Miss Marvel. That was her favorite character. I mean, her favorite character starting out was Iron Man, and it is interesting if you read the forward how she didn't really read that many X-Men, so she had to read a lot of X-Men to start writing this story. But it's just so amazing for somebody to be a fan of the comic, then get cast as the character that she loves so much, and now she's writing the comic. I love hearing that. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a good comic, but we've seen that before, right? Where an actor wants to come in, or a director, or a screenwriter, like, or even a novelist wants to come in and write comics. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good comic. But this was a lot of fun. I know I don't review things here. I give you the overview of what the book is, so you can see the artwork if it's for you, and if it's not, then of course you move on. Or I tell you just what the plot is. But for this one, I think, like, it was a fun story that reminded me of the way that things used to be. As a matter of fact, this artwork here by Gomez really reminds me a lot of Adriana Afonso. But it's different because now she is reawakened into this mutant world, where before she had ties to the Inhumans. As a matter of fact, I wanted to talk about this dream sequence here, or is it a dream, where Miss Marvel, Carol Danvers, during her Miss Marvel era, is kind of visiting her, and she mentions things like her seventh sense. Not a lot of writers have talked about Carol's seventh sense, so that was a nice touch. But she goes through, like, the history of Miss Marvel and Kamala's journey from being in the Champions to the Avengers, her ties to the Inhumans, and how little she's talking to the Inhumans nowadays, and then her awakening to be a mutant. So, yes, she passed away. She died in the pages of Spider-Man, Zeb Wells' Spider-Man, and came back to life because we found out she was a mutant. Which a lot of us kind of saw that coming, right? Especially with ties to the TV show. But that's what we're dealing with now, is her being a mutant. But the interesting thing about her that we find out, because Orchis is after all these mutants, right? They're trying to wipe out mutants, and they can track mutants, but they can't track her, even though they have a facility under the Empire University. Why is it that they can't track her? Well, they can't read her X gene because it never really triggered. She was exposed to the whole Terrigen mist and became an Inhuman. So maybe it's a mix. So she is definitely a mix of both. She has her inhuman abilities, so she's part inhuman and part mutant, which we haven't really seen before. Of course, she appeared early on in those pages of the Marvel Now, which is also collected in here. Oh, by the way, this collects New Mutants 1 through 4. I'm sorry. Miss Marvel, the New Mutant 1 through 4, and then her first full appearance in All New Marvel Now .1. Back then, she appeared as an Inhuman, but there have been many interviews with G. Willow Wilson how the original idea was to make her a mutant. But back then, they were pushing the whole Inhuman thing because they were trying to kind of not do a lot of X-Men related books or introduce New Mutants during that era. At least that was the rumor. Oh no, the rumor was because Fox held the rights to X-Men. Nothing's been really 100% proven. It's just what we've all thought. Yes, there's even a variant cover here by Adrian Alfona. And that's what this reminds me of. Gomez's artwork reminds me a lot of Alfona's art early on in the first few issues of G. Willow Wilson's run on Miss Marvel. But you also have characters like Synch and, of course, Talon that are trying to figure out exactly what it is that Orchis wants. So Orchis has this plan called the Trojan Horse, where they're trying to find out where the rest of the X-Men are hiding. And if they can find a Trojan Horse, they can find where the rest of the X-Men are. And if you're familiar with the Trojan Horse story, I'm pretty sure you know where that's going to go, especially with a character that they can't track. But this was a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed this. It kind of reminded me of that Simple era when she was first finding out her powers. I forgot how much I enjoyed reading her character. Not to say that the Saladin Ahmed era was bad. Just, I don't know, it just never clicked with me what he did with her character. But this was great. And obviously, when you have the scriptwriter who's written for the show and the actress that plays the character, they both have an understanding of her voice. I mean, this is the young lady that was correcting Kevin Feige on a lot of Marvel facts. Like, she's a nerd, like us, and I love it. I'm here for that. Very happy for it. And my buddy Peter said the second volume gets better and better. So the whole mystery of how they're able to track her, if they're able to track her and use her as a Trojan horse, you can find that out for yourself. All the way in the back is where you have her first appearance here. Again, Adrian Alfona doing the artwork and G. Willow Wilson writing the story that introduces her. And the variant covers in thumbnail size. 120 pages, $17.99. Star Wars Legends Epic Collection, The Empire Volume 1. This is the new printing. So this was I think this was actually the very first, if I'm not mistaken, Epic Collection with Star Wars. Please correct me if I'm wrong. By all means. You all do a wonderful job of that. And I am wrong quite often. Just ask my wife. So this is the newest printing. And this time around, it does retail for $44.99. Always telling you here, these stories take place between episodes 3 and 4. Collected in here is Star Wars Republic 78 through 80 that leads into the Dark Times. Star Wars Purge, and then Purge Seconds to Die, Purge the Hidden Blade, Purge the Tyrant's Fist 1 through 2, and then Star Wars Darth Vader and the Lost Command 5-issue mini, and Star Wars Dark Times 1 through 5. So the first 5 issues. 432 pages, $44.99. Here's a quick recap in case you haven't seen episodes 1, 2, and 3. So just in case you haven't seen episodes 1, 2, and 3, you might be in for a shock as to what's happening. I've done an overview of the Empire Omnibus Volume 1 and a lot of the stories when I was reading this. I kind of stopped going, wait, I remember this. Okay, this was in, because I didn't have this one for a long time. I had sold my copy many years ago of the Empire of all my Star Wars Epic collections, and I just thought maybe one day we were going to get Omnis, and sure enough we did. But they are reprinting the Epics. The Omnis don't necessarily mean that they're not going to reprint the Epics. So this era is a fun era for me, because ever since we heard about the damn Dark Times in Episode 4, when Obi-Wan Kenobi's talking about the time that came before, the Empire, and then he starts talking about the Dark Times, you're like, what is that? Then you see Episode 3, and you're like, okay, wow, Anakin, well, maybe it was just me, turned kind of quick. That was fast. And there's nothing in between, right? I mean, the Clone Wars, of course, that happened. I love that cartoon, by the way, the CG and the animated one. But this reveals the hunt for the Jedi. Right after the Execute Order 66 is done, Vader and his stormtroopers and snowtroopers and all these characters are going on the hunt after all of these characters, all of these Jedis across the galaxy. And this is broken down by some really cool miniseries. I find The Purge to be one of my favorite ones, especially with the John Ostrander stories in here. The first two really stand out. They're told from Vader's point of view. The artwork is amazing. The Hidden Blade also has some amazing artwork too. And then we have The Lost Command. That one's interesting. It's about how they're on the hunt to go and kill Moff Tarkin's son because they feel like if Moff Tarkin loses somebody, it would drive him madder and eviler. I guess that's the way the Empire works. And that one's 5 issues and it's okay. I'm not really sure how I felt about the portrayal of Vader in that one. But then we get Dark Times. And Dark Times, like I said, is preceded by those 2 stories, the short stories. But Dark Times is so freaking good. Because what happens when you're reading about a character like Vader, very cartoony artwork here, by the way, in The Lost Command. When you're reading about the character of Vader, the problem is that eventually you can only know so much about what's going on in his head. Like, for example, in The Lost Command, he's having dreams about Padme. They have a son, and the dreams haunt him because he just doesn't know if he did the right thing, if he made the right decisions. So his way is still just to hunt down Jedis. Rick Leonardi supplying the artwork through here, which I love Rick Leonardi's art. But I think it was just the way that Vader was written through these pages. But Dark Times is kind of where you get that balance of, okay, we know this is a story about Vader hunting these characters, but now let's find out more about these characters. So we see Jedi Dash Jenner through here, and he's going to be making lots of friends through this particular volume. They're going to get their spaceship, and they're going to take off. He actually helps out in the first few issues. I think this is a character that had appeared before. Yeah, this guy right here. He was a character that had appeared before, and that is the character of Bomo Greenbark. So, Das is helping Bomo get his family back, get his people back, while we're dealing with Vader hunting the Jedi Knights, whoever's left. And I really like the character of Das. I may have said this in my overview of the Omnibus. And Bomo, like, together, they play really awesome characters, and I'm not sure I know exactly how much longer they're going to be around, because whenever you're dealing with the Dark Times, there's not some happy endings through this particular book. So most of it is a collection of short stories of Vader just being a complete badass and hunting down Jedi. This is one of my favorite moments that I know I mentioned in the Omnibus, when he gets his hand chopped off. Like, this is my type of Vader. He uses the Force on his hand that is still holding a blade and throws it at his enemy. That's the kind of Vader that's going to be through these pages. And some phenomenal artwork through here. Oh my gosh, especially here through the Dark Times. And this is the art of Douglas Wheatley. Let's look all the way in the back for extras. So you have the Clone Wars Volume 9 Endgame, Darth Vader and the Lost Command hardcover dust jacket, interior art here from the Lost Command pages by Rick Leonardi. An introduction here by Douglas Wheatley, Randy Stadley, and some interior original art. Dark Times proposal art by Ariel Olivetti. And then this is Dark Times number 1, sketch cover by Douglas Wheatley. So, book again has 432 pages and retails for $44.99. Carnage Epic Collection, Volume 3, The Monster Inside. And this right here is taken from the Peter Parker Spider-Man. I believe it's issue number 10, if I'm not mistaken. So, Volume 3, 1998 to 2005. $44.99. This book collects just a variety of issues that feature the character of not just Carnage, not just Cletus Cassidy, but also Toxin. So that's nice. That's a nice addition because it feels like Toxin does belong in a Carnage Epic Collection. Now, if you're wondering, is all of this collected in the Omnibus? No. Matter of fact, we're starting with the stuff that happens in the late 90s first in this Epic Collection. So we have Amazing Spider-Man 430 to 431, Peter Parker Spider-Man number 13, Web Spinners Tales of Spider-Man 13 and 14, Venom vs. Carnage 1 through 4, Toxin 1 through 6, X-Men Spider-Man number 3, and then What If 108. 432 pages, $44.99. The first story here is by Tom DeFalco, and you have artwork here by Joe Bennett. This is an older style before the Immortal Hulk, but this is the symbiote of Carnage taking over the Silver Surfer, and that will come to play a little bit later in that What If issue. Then we have a little cameo of Cletus Cassidy with the symbiote of Carnage. This time around, it's Eddie Brock that has gone inside the prison, but he doesn't want to free Cletus. I mean, they've never seen eye to eye, so Cletus is like, "Are you here to free me?" "No, I'm here to collect what's mine," and he takes the symbiote with him, and one can assume maybe he's eating him. So Cletus doesn't have a symbiote. Like, he's dreaming about having the Carnage symbiote back. This is issue number 13. I was wrong. It's not issue number 10. Issue number 13 is what they use for the cover. And this issue actually has some big moving things that are happening. Keep in mind, this is during the time when there was also Amazing Spider-Man. That was written by John Byrne and drawn by John Byrne. This is the stuff by Howard Mackey. But something's going... When you're reading this, you're going to be like, what the hell is going on with MJ? Kind of tragic, and you see it resolved later on in the run. Cletus Cassidy, even without a symbiote, still managing to be creepy as hell by just drenching himself in blood and going after Spider-Man. But how is he going to fight Spider-Man without a symbiote? I mean, there's just no chance. Then we get into the real interesting Spider-Man Unlimited type of issues. And I mean Unlimited like the cartoon Unlimited. Where Cletus keeps getting called. He has no symbiote, but he's being called from somewhere else. The other place, as he keeps calling it. And him and Spider-Man get transported to another location. Another dimension. Could be in the negative zone. I don't know. There's Blastar right here. And this is where who's been calling him is none other than the symbiote costume. So that's where he gets it back. But does it stay? Well, is it the original symbiote costume? Does it matter? Can he still call himself Carnage? We get to Peter Milligan's story now. And this is the Venom Carnage 4-issue miniseries, or Venom vs. Carnage. But the big thing about this particular one is the introduction of the character known as Patrick Mulligan, who will become the other spawn of, not Venom this time around, but of Carnage. And that spawn will be called Toxin. So see what I mean? There's ties to Carnage, so it makes sense that the Toxin miniseries is told through these pages. So they do have a little couple pages from the New Avengers issue number 2 with the Sentry. And if you've seen that, you know what I mean. That is very important because something happens to the character Cletus Cassidy and Carnage that takes him out of the picture for a little bit. So now we focus on Toxin. So this is the story of Toxin trying to get those people back into the vault and becoming more of an anti-hero while still trying to fight off this Toxin symbiote. Kind of like everybody else, except for Cletus Cassidy, who keeps just asking for it back. But this is written by Peter Milligan and phenomenally drawn by Derek Robertson. This takes place during the time of New Avengers, like the first few issues. And we end this particular collection with the X-Men Spider-Man storyline here that features Mr. Sinister and, of course, Carnage, with beautiful artwork by Mario Alberti. And also the What If issue right here. And remember when I said the symbiote and Silver Surfer? Yeah, this comes into play here. So it's pretty much what if Carnage symbiote had taken over Silver Surfer and he had all the cosmic powers. So let's look in the back here for some extras. We have the New Avengers Most Wanted file here, some original pages. And this right here is the Hotshot Spider-Man poster art by Mike Mignola. And that is Carnage Epic Collection Volume 3, The Monster Inside. It has become that time of the video where we look at all the spines of the books coming out this particular week from Marvel Comics. And also a reminder to smash that like button if you're enjoying the content of our channel. We do put out videos every day. Alright, let's keep going with the overviews. Fantastic Four Epic Collection, Atlantis Rising. I, on my channel, have talked about my love of freaking Tom DeFalco and Paul Ryan's run on the Fantastic Four. Very underrated, amazing run. It's the run a lot of us in the 90s and late 80s kind of fell in love with, mainly in the early 90s. But this is another one that's no exception. Volume 24, 1994 to 1995. There's things in here that have never really been collected. This is in the aftermath of the whole Secret Defenders and Fantastic Four fight. Well, Wolverine scratched. It's a little more than a scratch. The Thing scars his face. That's why he was wearing that helmet for a while. We've lost Reed. We don't know where he is. And it starts off with one of the strongest issues I hear no one talking about. And that is this issue right here, 393. I love this issue. So this collects Fantastic Four 393 to 402, Fantastic Four 7 through 9, Force, that's the Psylord series, the spin-off, Fantastic Four Atlantis Rising 1 and 2, Fantastic Four Atlantis Rising, the Collector's Preview, 480 pages, $44.99. Choices. This is the story I was talking about. Choices is such a good story because what's happening here is we have the Puppet Masters back. Look at this wonderful artwork by Paul Ryan. Never got his due, I swear. Ben's face is healed, and Alicia and Ben are together as if nothing had happened previously. And you know the nightmare that has happened previously with Johnny. Now the Thing was gone, but Alicia wasn't really Alicia. It was Elijah. And Sue is still looking for her husband. Where is Mr. Fantastic? In what world is Alicia and the Thing in? Oh, it's just such a good story, especially the choice that's made at the end. The way that Ben puts it would have made Stan the Man proud. So we do have more characters coming back, like Scott Lang, and you have She-Hulk kind of playing a little bit of a big role through here. There's the rematch with Wolverine with a little bit of a twist to the ending where Wolverine wants to meet Ben, maybe apologize over a drink, but was it really Wolverine that sent the message to meet Ben? And how is Ben going to deal with this? Are they going to go at it? It's going to be a big rematch. Meanwhile, again, now Sue is getting the help of Nathaniel Richards. They're in Latveria. They're trying to figure out where exactly Reed is. Is he dead? And then all of this is leading into the big issue 400. We have the Renegade Watcher that comes back here. Instead of just sitting around watching, he's causing havoc because he has that choice. And we have Kristoff come back through these very pages, and you can find out how exactly. We have a little bit of the Fantastic Force that shows up through here, but the big Watcher, the Rogue Watcher storyline, that leads up to issue 400. We still have the flaming apparitions of Sue Storm showing up everywhere now, warning people that they should listen to Nathaniel Richards because he's the one with the answers. And like I mentioned, leading to issue 400. By the way, this is the cover to issue 400, but issue 400 had a chromium cover too. Yes, this cover right here. It was a silver chromium cover. They were doing gimmicky covers back then. There is an introduction here by Stan the Man Lee talking about all the people that have worked on the world's greatest comic book magazine. And that ending in the aftermath is no exception too, and especially the decision that Sue makes. And then we get the Fantastic Four event, Atlantis Rising, which deals with Morgan Le Fay causing trouble, because that's just what she does. And this isn't the only book this week that Morgan Le Fay plays a big part in. And what she's doing is she is making Atlantis rise. So the sunken continent of Atlantis is now rising above the waters, and it's causing, of course, what you would think, a huge crisis down for Namor and his people. So not only do the Fantastic Four get involved, but also the Fantastic Force, so it becomes a crossover. And is it really Morgan Le Fay that is behind everything? And who exactly is Psylord, if you don't know? Well, this definitely lets you know who he is by the time you get finished reading this big crossover event. I haven't read this in years. I'll take that back. I haven't read this in decades. The Atlantis Rising is I think I read it when it came out, and that was it. I never reread it, and when I sold off all my comics back in what's that? I hate thinking about that. That was my dark time. But hey, we all make mistakes, and I had to pay for a divorce lawyer, and here we are. It made me a better person. I got rid of my key comics, X-Men 1, Giant Size 1, Hulk 181. Yeah, but you know what? I'm here talking to you fine folks, and it was all worth it, because I wouldn't be here if that had not happened in my life. Now, what the hell was I saying? Oh, yes, I haven't read these stories since, like, the 90s when they came out. Since we're talking about 1994, 1995. It's been that long, so almost 30 years as I've read some of this. To me, it still holds up. I love this stuff. And I know the artwork is not for everybody, but I'm a big fan of Paul Ryan. Now, Paul Ryan didn't do the actual one-shots. I believe it's okay, so it is MC Wyman and Jeff Isherwood. They're the main pencilers through here. And Ray Garcia is the inker. But I kind of dig what they were doing. I was a big MC Wyman fan, too. So this was the trade paperback, I believe. The Inhumans Origin of the Inhumans trade paperback. They also did, of course, the Marvel Masterworks. Beyond the Blue Event Horizon. The Atlantis Crossing, page 2. Okay. These are just the previews of the Atlantis Rising storyline. There's some Byrne stuff. The toys that were coming out. Avalon Rising. A Tale of Two Dooms. Who exactly is Kristoff? Marvel's Top 10 Monsters. That'd be a fun video to do. And then the cartoon right here, talking about what is to come. The swimsuit special, and yes, the door that is closing and counting down to issue 400. This was published in a polybag right there. And an afterword by Ralph Macchio, who's been doing a lot of afterword for these epic collections. 480 pages, $44.99. Some nostalgic goodness right there. So why didn't I give that book my seal of approval? Because we have Astonishing X-Men Modern Epic Collection coming out this week. That's why. So this gets my seal of approval. I think you probably know how I feel about the story if you've been following me for a while. And this is the very first X-Men Modern Epic Collection. The next one will be Grant Morrison's new X-Men, and that is due out in June. So this is Volume 1. And I don't know if they're going to continue with a 1, if the next one will be Volume 3, so it won't be the Joss Whedon era. But yeah, this is the story that kept me in comics. Like, Grant Morrison's new X-Men brought me back to comics after a long hiatus. Astonishing X-Men is the one that said, you're here to stay, buddy. You're not going anywhere. And I'm glad I did. So I'm loving it. Ups and downs, baby. Just like all the other X-Men stories. But oh my gosh, is this one so good. I love this book. Joss Whedon, John Cassaday, Laura Martin's colors are amazing. Chris Elapoulos doing the lettering here. And this takes place after New X-Men. So, there's a couple minor spoilers I'm going to be talking about. Nothing too big. Well, one of them is the death of a character that comes back in this book that had been dead. So, if you don't want to know anything about this book and who comes back in this book, by all means, jump to the next book. Just know that this is my seal of approval. All right. So, this collects Astonishing X-Men 1 through 12. 328 pages, $39.99. It is a little smaller than most of the other Epic collections. But modern Epics, I believe, have been slimmer than the classic stuff. I don't know why. And I don't know if they'll have fatter collections or not. But here we have two different storylines. Gifted and Danger. The first 6 issues are about the return of Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde has been gone from the X-Men after the events of... well, I guess she did come back in Excalibur. I forgot she did come back in Mechanics. We kept up with her for a little bit. But at one time, after the death of Colossus, during the Dream's End storyline, there was a way to cure the Legacy Virus. Legacy Virus was this big thing that was going around in the 90s, killing mutants, and there wasn't a cure. Writers forgot about it, and then the editor was like, we need to wrap this up if nobody's going to write any stories. So they made it where Colossus would unleash a pheromone, something about him giving himself the shot and then releasing this pheromones in the air that would heal everybody, because he couldn't see anybody else lose a sister like he did. I thought that was such a heroic and amazing way to die. Kitty took his ashes to Russia, and yeah, that's where that ended. That was during the time when I wasn't reading comics, and I had to go back and reread that stuff. Luckily, it was before this. But this opening scene right here, where Kitty's coming back to the mansion because she's been called back to Xavier's school for gifted youngsters, and all these flashbacks right here. It was like, for me, like metaphorically on the nose, coming back home to what made me happy, to that era of X-Men. My very first comic right there, 168. You know, her just reminiscing all the happier times she had at the school, and being late, of course, for the meeting right here. So what is happening through here is, after the events of New X-Men, there is another character that died, of course. I'm not going to reveal that one. I had to talk about Colossus. You can find out who dies in New X-Men. It's a big deal, and it changes a lot of things. But the X-Men are being summoned back to the mansion to decide what to do. So they decide that they need to put the costumes back on, because people love costume spandex, and they respect it. I love a lot of, there's some good dialogue through here. I mean, this is Joss Whedon, the guy that went on to do Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And honestly, Buffy's based a lot on the character of Kitty Pryde. And I understand and respect the people that can't separate the artist from the art. So, you know, if you hear the name Joss Whedon and you can't buy this, don't. I get it. But also keep in mind that there are other people that worked on this book. So that is something that I do like to mention, though. So the first storyline is about this particular doctor right here that's introduced in the very first issue. This is Dr. Rao, and she claims to have a cure for mutants. So that's when things get interesting. We're also introduced to Ord, who will play a big part in the first storyline and the second story arc. This is another one of my favorite moments right here, where they're putting on the classic costumes. No more leather jacket, no more leather pants. It's time to make nice with the public. We have to do more than that, Logan. We have to astonish them. Oh my gosh, what a freaking awesome scene. Sure, cheesy as hell. I don't care. I'm here for it. So, with this woman that is claiming that she has the cure for mutation, we start seeing mutants surrounding her building and wanting a cure. Right? We talked about this before, especially whenever we did the old reader, new reader on the Mutant Massacre. We've talked about, you know, how there's certain hierarchy and acceptance when it comes to mutants, right? You have beautiful mutants, good-looking mutants, they're usually okay, but then you have people that like the Morlocks that are not pretty, not easy on the eyes, and they have to live in the tunnels. So some mutants are approaching. There's a whole line of them. By the way, there's a surprising derogatory term that is left in this book that I've seen it taken out in other books. You can find out for yourself what that is. Because I reread this. I love this book, so it's one of my favorite stories. I don't care how many times I've read it. So what happens is Beast is interested in this, but is he really? Is he interested in a cure? What does Ord have to do with any of this? He comes from a world called Break World. Oh, God. Lockheed came back. People had forgotten about Lockheed. How could you forget about Lockheed? So what happens at the end of issue number 4, and I promise I won't give much away, it's just one of my favorite moments that leads into issue number 6 that I freaking have to talk about, and you can find out what the rest of this book is that Kitty, while investigating this particular facility, because the X-Men have discovered that Dr. Rao and her colleagues are getting a cure by experimenting on and cutting up mutants. So they're finding bodies, and Kitty goes exploring and runs into Colossus. Freaks her out. And, you know, he himself freaks out because he's like, oh God, that means I'm dead, right? Am I finally dead? I remember being in the car reading this. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, was driving, and I started tearing up. And she's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I just read one of the most beautiful returns in a comic book, and I don't know why. I don't know, it just kind of brought back that childhood feeling of, like, it feels like something was missing from X-Men, and maybe having that back, this ridiculous part right here. meant something. But yes, all of this leads into this big clash with Ord that isn't over. You still have things in here, like you have the amazing introduction of Agent Brand and Sword. They all debut through here. And then you have Ord, who will play a bigger part. You have someone that is talking behind the scenes to the character of Emma Frost. So you're thinking, okay, she's going to betray the X-Men. What exactly is going on? Ord at one time gets away. And this right here, probably top 10 favorite freaking moments of comic books. Where Wolverine looks at Pete and he's like, "You feeling rested up, Petey?" And of course, Peter, just being a simple guy, "I am strong." Then I got just 2 words for you, bub. Oh my god. I remember cheering. I remember like my fist pumping up in the air and I'm like, hell yes! That's how you write X-Men. And it came back when I was reading it upstairs the other day. That feeling, that rush of like, oh my god, this is my X-Men. It just felt right. Issue number 7 here with I Like Beer, that's all I will say. And then the storyline of Danger, and you can find out what that is and how it ties to Professor Xavier. Seal of approval, John Cassidy does the entire book, so volume 2 will contain the last part of this. Let's look in the back here for what extra goodies we have, because we have this in omnibus format, in OHCs, but it's been a while since those have been printed, so I'm wondering if these have anything extra back here that we haven't seen before. Some original art right here and variant cover sketches. Because this is when they started bringing back the variant covers. Each issue had a variant cover. The director's cut, which has been collected before. The interview. This is the spotlight interview. And original page art right there. And an ad for the upcoming modern era epic collection of Spider-Girl. Astonishing X-Men, Volume 1. Gifted, 328 pages, $39.99. Wrapping up this round of overviews is Marvel Masterworks, Spider-Woman, Volume 4. This is the last one. So, let's look in here. The flap right there, and Spider-Woman. Printed at the Donnelly printer, just like the rest of the Marvel Masterworks have been for a long time. Volume 4, introduction, and a wonderful introduction by Chris Claremont, where he talks about just loving to just babble on. I'm here for it. And the credits, of course, you have Chris Andersenti writing the final issues, Roger Stern doing the Avengers issues, which bring back the character of Jessica, because she has an interesting exit. Steve Lealoha doing the main pencils during the era of Chris Claremont, but also doing the inks and sometimes the colors. He did the colors for like 3 issues in here. Michael Golden doing, of course, Avengers annual number 10. Brian Postman doing 47 through 50, and Al Milgram doing those Avengers issues. The inkers, Bob Wyzek, Shelley Lefferman doing the lettering here, and Joe Rosen, one of my favorite letterers. Ed Hannigan doing the colors. Carl Gafford, another colorist. So this is the ending of Jessica Drew as Spider-Woman for a while. Because, I mean, it's not until... And you could tell that... I love this cover, so I'm glad they used it for that. You could tell that Claremont really liked the character of Jessica Drew. So Jessica and Lindsay still living in California. Morgan Le Fay, I swear, plays a huge part in this book. And honestly, all the way to the ending, all the way to issue number 50, we're introduced to Deathstroke and his group of Terminators. I said that right. I don't know if Chris and Marf were talking at the time or not, but I always found that interesting. This is the Flying Tiger fight right here. We are going to see the Viper and Silver Surfer play a big part in Jessica's life too. But not before we get one of the biggest, most powerful issues, which is the Avengers annual number 10, which is the introduction of Rogue, but also the depowering of Carol Danvers, whose best friend is Jessica Drew. Jessica saved her from the bridge, and Carol had some bad things happen to her. My goodness. I'm so glad Claremont brought her out of obscurity. But yes, this introduces us to Rogue and why Carol Danvers was depowered and what it could mean for her future. Claremont was always a big fan of just these strong female characters. Morgan Le Fay, again, sending her back in time, maybe. And this begins the whole Viper storyline. There's a beautiful moment between Jessica and Lindsay when she wants to reveal at Lindsay's death door, what she thinks is her death door, that she's Spider-Woman, and then what Lindsay says to her. Thought it was beautiful. Claremont, man, just knocking it out of the park every time during this particular era. And then in his intro, he's so hard on himself. He's like, I wish I had written this differently. I sometimes hate reading my old stuff. But Jessica promising that she is going to take down Viper. And then the Impossible Man showing up. Chris Claremont and Steve show up in this issue too as a small little cameo. Said I have strong feelings against the Impossible Man. The Kingpin coming in for the final Claremont story. And then we get Daddy Longlegs with the beginning of the Innocenti run and Brian Postman run. So they're the ones that wrap up the series. And when I said she had a weird ending, I mean she had a weird ending. Anybody that read Spider-Woman number 50, I can't imagine what it was like at that time, because I remember reading this as back issues and I was so confused. So I'm glad when you read this, you'll find out what I mean if you're reading it for the first time. I'm glad that we also have in here those issues of Avengers that lead into what is going on with Jessica Drew. And then after that, we don't see her for a while until the pages of Wolverine, because again, Claremont just loved the character of Jessica and brought back her whole Private Eye side to her, and it's not until New Avengers that she gets her powers back. So here is Gypsy Moth, Morgan Le Fay from the handbook, and this is a house ad. More house ads here. So it's the same kind of extras that we've had in the past. And then the bios on all of these wonderful creators that put this book together. Biographies, research, and written by John Rhett Thomas. $75. This one's a 400-page masterwork. And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing any of these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor, CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more. And that was the content and page count of each of these books. Let me know in the comments down below which ones you are picking up, which ones you hope get collected into an omnibus format, a hardcover format that hasn't yet. And are you a big a fan of Tom DeFalco's era as I am? And what book out of this batch would you have chosen as your one pick of the week? Since I did mine, and I went with Astonishing. This was hard because I love the DeFalco and Paul Ryan era. I really like the ending and the whole mystery of Spider-Woman. And Empire has some amazing stories. So this was a hard week, but I'm the Uncanny Omar. So had to go with Astonishing X-Men. If you have any questions, leave them down below. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, and ring that bell for notifications. That's it, everybody. Stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.